The year was 1789, and Georgia was still young, carved from wilderness and built on backs bent in labor. On the edge of Savannah, the Harwood plantation sprawled like a small kingdom. Fields of cotton swaying under the blistering sun, cabins scattered like broken teeth, and in the center, the great house with whitewashed columns. Charles Harwood, its master, was a man both respected and feared. To outsiders, he was a gentleman of wealth, a widower raising two daughters after his wife's sudden passing. He spoke with charm at church, donated generously during harvest festivals, and even entertained officers of the new republic. But behind the gates, his temper was legend. He carried a cane not only as a gentleman's accessory, but as an instrument of punishment. His daughters, Amelia, 16, and Clara, 12, lived in a house where laughter was hushed and silence was safer than words. Among the enslaved was Evelyn, tasked with tending to the girls. She moved quietly, her dark eyes absorbing everything but revealing nothing. To most, the Harwood plantation looked like prosperity. To Evelyn, it felt like a coffin slowly filling with airless dread. Evelyn had not been born into chains. She came from Charleston, the daughter of a free black woman and a white trader who loved her enough to raise her as his own. She remembered days of freedom, reading by candlelight, fishing at the docks, hearing her father's laugh echo through their modest home. But debts are crueler than whips. When her father died suddenly, creditors descended like vultures. Property was seized, including Evelyn and her two younger brothers. She was sold south, her brothers sent elsewhere. She never saw them again. The Harwood plantation became her prison. She was told never again to speak of her life before, but memory is stubborn. Every time she brushed Amelia's hair, she remembered her mother brushing hers. Every time she sang Clara to sleep, she thought of her brother's small hands clasped in hers on that final day. Her silence became her rebellion. She carried her memories like buried treasure, hidden but alive. Evelyn's role blurred the line between servant and family. To Amelia and Clara, she was not just the help, but their confidant. They whispered secrets into her ear. Amelia about the boy she fancied from church, Clara about her fear of storms. Evelyn stitched their dresses, tended their fevers, and read them bedtime stories whispered from memory. Yet she was still a slave. The same hands that tucked them into bed also scrubbed their chamber pots. When Charles entered, the girls sat at the table while Evelyn stood behind them, silent. The contradiction gnawed at her. Sometimes Clara would hug her and say, "You're like a mother to us." Evelyn would smile, but inside her heart ached. How could love and subjugation exist side by side? Each time Charles's cane whistled through the air and landed across her back for some imagined mistake, Evelyn remembered the truth. No matter their affection, she was not free. The kitchen was Evelyn's domain. The great black pot hung over a roaring fire, always filled with something: cornmeal, beans, meat stews, or sometimes lye soap. She spent hours stirring, feeding the flames, breathing in steam that scalded her face. The others saw only food or soap, but Evelyn began to see something else. She watched bubbles form, rise, and burst, trapped air fighting to escape, only to disappear. She thought of herself, thought of the others in the cabins. The heat was their suffering, the bubbling their cries, the lid of silence pressing down. "One day," she whispered to herself, "something will spill over." The boiling pot became a symbol, a grim promise. Every time she stirred, she imagined another outcome, not nourishment, but reckoning. It happened in January, a night colder than most. Charles returned from town drunk, his boots muddy, his cane striking the floor with angry rhythm. Evelyn was preparing Clara's tea when he barged into the kitchen. "Why's the girl sick?" he bellowed. "Do you not watch her?" "Worthless." Evelyn bowed her head. "Sir, she caught chill from the rain." "I dash." The cane struck her shoulder before she could finish. Pain exploded down her arm. The girls rushed in, crying, "Father, stop, please." Clara screamed, tugging at his sleeve, but Charles shoved them aside. "Back upstairs, both of you!" he roared. The cane fell again and again. When at last he staggered off to his study, Evelyn lay curled on the floor, her body throbbing. The girls knelt beside her, whispering apologies they could not understand. That night, as Evelyn pressed her wounds with a rag, something hardened inside her. Mercy was a lie. Survival required fire. From then on, Evelyn moved differently. She obeyed Charles with quiet precision, never meeting his eye. He mistook it for submission. In truth, she was studying. She noticed he drank himself into stupors on Wednesdays. She counted how many minutes it took him to doze in his chair. She memorized the creak of floorboards, the squeal of hinges. She tested the kitchen locks and found which ones stuck. Her mind returned always to the boiling pot. A grotesque idea grew, one that horrified her even as it tempted. "If I take him," she whispered into the flames, "I end it. No more whips, no more fear." But the daughters, they loved her. Could she love them back enough to spare them? Or would they betray her the moment she acted? Each night she lay awake, torn between vengeance and compassion. At dawn, Evelyn often slipped away to the river's edge. There, she whispered secrets into the current as though it could carry her words to God. "I don't want to hurt the girls," she confessed one morning, her voice cracking, "but I can't let them grow into him. If they learn his ways, the world will suffer more." The river gave no answer, only the rush of water over rocks. Yet, in its endless flow, Evelyn felt something greater, a reminder that freedom existed somewhere beyond, just as the water flowed to the ocean. She dipped her hands into the icy stream. "If I must damn myself," she whispered, "let it be for something that frees others." The storm came in March. Lightning lit the sky in jagged lines. Thunder shook the windows and rain pounded the fields. Charles stumbled home from town, soaked and furious, muttering curses. Evelyn met him in the kitchen with a false smile. "Sir, I kept stew warm for you." She gestured to the pot over the fire. He leaned over to sniff, and in that instant Evelyn swung the heavy iron pan she had hidden behind her back. It connected with a sickening crack. Charles collapsed, groaning. Her heart pounded. She dragged his limp body toward the cauldron where scalding lye boiled for soap-making. Every muscle screamed with effort. The heat blistered her skin. With a final heave, she pushed him in. The moment his body touched the lye, his scream pierced the storm, high and inhuman. Evelyn clamped her hands over her ears. The bubbling pot became his grave. The sound woke Amelia first. She shook Clara. "Do you hear that?" They crept downstairs, bare feet silent on the wooden steps. When they reached the kitchen doorway, they froze. Lightning illuminated the room. Evelyn, her face twisted with horror, standing before the great pot. Their father's screams echoed, then gurgled, then faded into bubbling silence. The smell of burning flesh filled the air. Clara clutched Amelia's hand. "Papa," she whispered. Evelyn turned, eyes wild, tears streaking her face. For the first time, the girls looked at her not as a mother figure, but as something terrifying, something capable of unimaginable violence. Amelia shrieked and bolted for the stairs. Evelyn grabbed her arm, desperate. "Wait! Please!" Clara sobbed, pressing her hands over her ears. Evelyn's mind raced. If she let them go, they would tell, and all would be lost. If she silenced them, she would forever damn herself. The pot hissed beside her, grotesque in its boiling. "Forgive me," she whispered, tightening her grip on Amelia. The storm raged outside, but the greater storm was inside Evelyn's chest. She stood on the edge of two paths, one leading to horror, the other to sacrifice. The world would one day tell the tale of a woman who boiled her master and his daughters alive, but in that moment, the truth of what she chose would remain locked in her heart. Amelia's terrified eyes begged for release. Evelyn loosened her grip, her breath ragged. She looked at the bubbling pot, then at the girls. "Go," she whispered hoarsely. Run as far as you can. Don't look back. Clara hesitated, but Amelia dragged her sister out into the rain. Their small figures vanished into the storm. Evelyn turned back to the kitchen. She knew what she must do: destroy the evidence. She toppled barrels of straw and splashed oil across the floor. The fire roared hungrily. She pushed at the pot until its scalding contents spilled, hissing, across the floorboards. When she left, the house was an inferno. To anyone who found it come morning, the truth would be clear, or so they would think. The master and his two daughters boiled alive by a deranged slave woman. The rain lashed Evelyn's skin as she ran from the flames, her heart pounding in time with the thunder. She did not follow Amelia and Clara. She had no right to. Her face was streaked with ash and tears, her clothes singed, but she pressed on into the woods. Branches clawed at her arms, mud sucked at her bare feet. Behind her, the orange glow of the house rose into the night sky. "Lord," she gasped, falling to her knees at last, "forgive me for what I've done, for what I've spared." Somewhere, she hoped the girls were still running, still alive. Somewhere, she hoped the story would die with her. But she already knew it would not. People would invent what they wished to believe. By morning, the great house was a blackened ruin. Neighbors gathered, shaking their heads, fanning smoke from their faces. Among the ashes, bones were found, but whether they belonged to one man or three, no one could tell. "The woman boiled them alive," someone whispered. "It's the devil's work," another said, crossing himself. The story took root before the embers cooled. Charles Harwood and his daughters had been murdered by a slave woman, boiled in her master's own cauldron. The tale was too grotesque, too memorable, not to spread. Evelyn's name was cursed before her body was even missed. Miles away, Amelia and Clara stumbled through the forest until they collapsed from exhaustion. Their dresses were torn, their feet bloodied, but they were alive. At dawn, an old woman named Hester found them near her cabin. She recognized the Harwood girls immediately, but when they begged her for help, she made a decision. "No one can know you live," she told them, her voice low and steady. "The world thinks you dead. That is your freedom." The girls cried, confused and grieving, but Hester fed them, clothed them, and swore she would keep their secret. From that day on, Amelia and Clara ceased to be the daughters of Charles Harwood. They became orphans of fire. Evelyn did not know the girls' fate. She wandered north, hiding by day, moving by night, guided by whispers of safe houses and hidden trails. Each step carried her farther from Georgia, but never from her guilt. She replayed the kitchen over and over, the screams, the terror in Amelia's eyes, the weight of her own decision. Had she damned them by sparing them? Would they one day grow into their father's cruelty? At night, she wept. "If they hate me, let it be so. If they live, let them curse my name." Her name would forever be stained with legend, but at least the girls had a chance at life. Years passed under Hester's care. Amelia and Clara grew into young women, their lives shaped by secrecy. They learned to plant, to sow, to mend. They took new names when strangers came through. At night, they sometimes whispered of Evelyn. Clara clung to the memory of her kindness, convinced Evelyn had saved them. Amelia wrestled with darker doubts. "She killed father," Amelia would mutter. "How can we love her still?" But when Clara reminded her of the choice Evelyn made, that she could have destroyed them but didn't, Amelia would fall silent, staring at the flames with wet eyes. Meanwhile, the tale of the boiling spread far beyond Georgia. It traveled by word of mouth, by newspaper ink, by the sermons of preachers warning of heathen savagery. "Beware the slave who turns," they would say. "Remember the Harwood case." The story grew darker with each telling. Some swore Evelyn laughed as she stirred the pot. Others claimed she danced as her victims screamed, but in hidden circles, among those who longed for freedom, the story was retold differently. They spoke of Evelyn as a warrior, a woman who dared strike against the chains that bound her. To them, she was no monster, but a martyr. Years later, Amelia sat by candlelight, her hand trembling as she wrote, "To Evelyn, if you still walk this earth, we know the truth. You spared us. You gave us life when you could have taken it. The world does not understand you, but we do. Perhaps you could not save yourself, but you saved us. We live free because of you. Forgive the world for its lies. Forgive us if we ever doubted. We carry your memory in silence. One day, we will tell it as it was." She folded the letter but never sent it. She feared that speaking Evelyn's name aloud might bring ruin. Instead, she tucked it into a Bible, where it waited, hidden, for another generation. Decades passed. Amelia and Clara married, had children, and told them only fragments of the truth. "Once we had another mother," Clara would say, her eyes far away. After the Civil War, long after both sisters had passed, Amelia's grandchildren discovered the letter in the old Bible. They read it with astonishment, realizing the truth of their family's survival. The legend they had always heard, that a mad woman boiled their ancestors, was a lie. The truth was harder, sadder, but also more beautiful. A woman had given up her own freedom, her own name, so that two children might live. And so the disturbing case of 1789 in Georgia was never truly what it seemed. History remembered fire, boiling, and murder, but the hidden truth was love twisted by chains, a desperate choice made in a storm. Evelyn's name remained a curse in the mouths of strangers, but in the secret hearts of the Harwood daughters and their descendants, she was something else. A savior, a guardian, a woman who chose compassion when the world expected cruelty. Her story reminds us that legends are not always truth, and truth is often gentler than rumor allows. Behind every frightening tale may lie a hidden act of grace. Moral reflection. Sometimes the bravest act is not vengeance but mercy, even when the world will never see it. Evelyn's legacy teaches us that compassion, though buried, has the power to survive centuries.